Welcome to, or welcome back to, the Agatha May Detective Agency. I'm Agatha May, and tonight I'll be covering the death of Shawna Graham Beallis in Chapter 3 of the Charity Beallis case. As a brief recap, Charity Beallis and her 6-year-old twins were found shot to death on December 3, 2025 in their Bonanza, Arizona home. It was a day after the final divorce hearing in Charity's divorce from Dr. Randall Beallis. If you need to get caught up in the case, I'll have a link to the playlist in the description box below. This episode won't have the normal graphics I use if you happen to be watching it on video. I was unable to get permission to use the documents that I found, so I just thought it'd be safer not to use them. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, it doesn't matter. Shawna Graham was born in Big Springs, Texas in 1977. She was an LPN and had a daughter who was the light of her life. In 2010, Shawna married Randall Beallis, freshly divorced from his first wife, Donna. Sadly, their marriage ended with the death of Shawna. On January 5, 2012, Shawna was found deceased from a gunshot wound to the head. Her death was quickly ruled a suicide, probably a little too quickly. I spoke to someone who knew Shawna well. I'm not going to mention their name to protect their identity and keep them safe. But this person shared some insights into who Shawna was and what was happening in Shawna and Randall's marriage immediately prior to her death. The day before she died, Shawna was going to confront Randall about his infidelity. She'd found out that he'd been cheating on her, but rather than get a divorce, she wanted to work on their marriage. One of Shawna's nieces has made a couple of TikTok videos about Shawna's death and shared some pieces of the autopsy report. Unfortunately, since Shawna's death was ruled a suicide, the police department destroyed all the evidence they had in her case in 2014. And it's not unusual for law enforcement to destroy evidence in these cases or give items back to the family once a case is finalized. However, I'm not even slightly convinced that Shawna's death was actually a suicide. For starters, where she was shot is unusual for a suicide. She was shot in the forehead at almost exactly 12 o'clock, so directly in the center of her forehead. And while it's not unheard of for a shot to happen in the forehead in a suicide, it is rare. Only 7% of self-inflicted gunshot wounds to the head are in the forehead. The majority of them are in the right temple. There was soot residue on Shawna's left palm, but none on her right hand, and she was right-handed. There was also soot deposit on her skull, so it appeared that the gun was pressed into her skin when it was fired. The lack of presence of soot doesn't necessarily prove whether Shawna did or didn't fire the shot. But I learned that Shawna was very proud of her looks. She took care of herself, and not too long before she died, she'd gone in for a cosmetic procedure called a mommy makeover and spent about $20,000 on it. It seems as though she would have chosen a different method to end her life rather than a gunshot to the head. And then there's the fact that her friends and family say that she wasn't anywhere close to being suicidal. According to the police report on the day Shawna died, Randall Beallis told officers that he had talked to Shawna that morning and that she told him she was going to kill herself and had repeatedly pulled the trigger on the gun. Randall said that Shawna had gotten mad because he'd replaced live rounds in the gun with plastic dummy rounds or practice rounds. He told police that their arguments had started a couple of months after they were married, and that Shawna did this almost every month, usually around the same time of the month. So is this man actually saying that she had PMS and got pissy so she shot herself? And here's an idea, Brainiac. Why not just take the gun out of the house if you're worried about your wife using a gun on herself? That whole dummy round story is just weird to me. He also said that Shawna went to Walmart to buy ammunition that day, but I'm not sure what part of the day that was supposed to be. So he returned home and talked to her for about 4 hours, attempting to, according to him, talk her down. And then he said he got a bad headache and thought she'd calm down, so he returned to work. So hang on. His wife is supposedly suicidal, and as a doctor, especially, he doesn't try to get her help. He just talks her down and then goes back to work? Had she already gone to Walmart to buy the ammo at this point? And if so, why didn't he take the gun and the ammunition from her? I'm sorry, but if a husband knows his wife has a gun and had bought ammunition, why would he leave them both there for her? Randall said that after he got back to work, Shawna had tried calling him a couple of times, but he ignored her calls because he was angry with her. So again, hang on. He's angry with his wife for being suicidal? Or maybe he was just angry with her because she had discovered his infidelity, called him out on it, and was going to leave, which would have given her really good grounds for divorce and for alimony or spousal support. Police said that there were cardboard boxes scattered around the living room as though someone was packing. For some reason, Randall left work again and went back home, and he said he found Shawna dead in their bed. He just happened to be talking on the phone with a friend when he discovered Shawna's body, too, and it was that unnamed friend who had called 911. So, was it just a coincidence that he was on the phone when he walked into a house he'd left not too soon before where he'd been fighting with his wife? It just seems more natural for me for someone to not want to be on the phone when they're walking into a house where there was fighting going on and they might be walking into another potential fight. It just seems like it might be a convenient way to have an alibi of sorts when he found Shawna's body. And it makes me wonder if she was dead before he left after being there for 4 hours. Randall's story just sounds a little hinky to me. Let's look at the timeline of the day. So Randall had gone to work, and sometime in the morning, Shawna had called him and was angry because he'd replaced the bullets in the gun with dummies. So sometime that day, she went to Walmart and bought ammunition. And the police verified that she had been at Walmart, bought the ammo, but then they said that the box of ammunition, her purse, and the receipt were still in her car. And they didn't mention if there was any ammunition missing in the box or not, though. And why would she leave those items in her car? Then at some point, Randall is home for about 4 hours, returns to work, then ignores 2 phone calls from Shawna, then goes home, and the police show up at 2:23 in the afternoon. So if you throw in about 30 minutes of drive time for him, that's a lot happening in what was probably only 6 or 7 hours. And when the police asked Randall what the exact times of all these events were, Randall became angry and told them all the times were on his phone. This guy really seems to get angry a lot, doesn't he? An investigator said that when they got to the house, there was an empty bottle of wine and an empty wine glass on the kitchen table. So remember how the original story that was published was that Charity had told her father that she'd shot Shawna, and she was glad they didn't fingerprint the wine glass she'd been drinking out of? Well, it seems really strange that she would have been drinking by herself, unless it was after Shawna had died, and then you'd think that she would have wiped off or even just thrown out the wine glass. And I think there would have been a really good chance of one of the neighbors seeing her, because Shawna and Randall lived in a neighborhood at the time, unless Charity was hiding in the car and was with Randall that first time he went home for 4 hours. And then Charity's father has come out since then and said that he told police that Charity knew who shot Shawna, not that she'd been the one to pull the trigger. Maybe she drank the wine to calm her nerves. Or maybe it was Shawna who drank the wine, or even Randall, and it was from the night before. The autopsy report stated that the lab had retained specimens from Shawna for toxicological testing, but no testing was ever performed. So we don't know if Shawna was the wine drinker or not. So let's go back to talking about what we do know. Now, in the report, police said that there was a plant knocked over and a coffee table that looked out of place. So it sounds like there might have been a struggle or some kind of physical fight. They also found a jacket hanging in the closet of the master bedroom, and it had what appeared to be blood on the sleeve. And it was taken in for testing, but who knows what happened to it or if it was ever even tested. There were also 2 photos of Shawna and Randall on the bed beside her. Having been told that she thought that her daughter was the world, why would she not have had a photo of her daughter there? A note was found that day, too, and for some reason the police said it was a suicide note, but it doesn't read like a suicide note at all to me. It read, quote, "I, Shawna Beallis, wish that my daughter, name redacted, date of birth redacted, be left to my parents, Lucky and Jean Graham, if something should happen to me. I also wish that all my personal effects, such as my house located at redacted in Poto, Oklahoma, be left to them. I leave nothing to my spouse, Randy Beallis. These are my final wishes." And it's signed Shawna Beallis and dated 1/4/2012, the day before she died. Now, to me, this sounds more like something that someone wrote because they were worried something was going to happen to them, not that they were going to take their own life. Usually, end of life letters are filled with remorse and they're emotional and telling people they love them. And again, with Shawna's daughter being so important to her, I don't think she would have left a note without telling her daughter how much she loved her. So Shawna's niece doesn't think that Shawna even wrote that note. And she had examples of Shawna's known handwriting to compare to the note that was left. And there are differences between the two handwritings. The A's are different, the capital I's are completely different, and her signature was different as well. Her niece had also said that Shawna had cancer a few years before her death and had already made out a will, so I'm not sure why this note would even be necessary. And again, it doesn't sound like a suicide note to me. Police had taken Randall's phone that day, but after his interview, he asked if he could have it so he could call his attorney to have him stop divorce papers from being put in the mail. So, is this just coincidence that there were divorce proceedings going when two of his three wives died from gunshot wounds? And is it just coincidence that he made sure he hurried to stop the divorce proceedings both times? And before I finish, I want to go back to the autopsy and tell you the part that stood out to me the most. And it was this quote, "The fingernails are shorter than the fingertips, roughly trimmed and clean." End quote. So we have a woman who takes pride in her appearance. She has cosmetic surgery, she dresses well, she wears makeup on a regular basis, she goes to the salon for her hair, and even when she's dressed casually, she still had on makeup and jewelry. So while it wouldn't be unusual for her fingernails to be short since she was a nurse, but roughly trimmed and shorter than her fingertips, that does not fit in with the kind of woman Shawna was. That sounds like someone might have clipped them after she died because they were worried there might be DNA under them. At least that's my take on it. So the odds of someone having two out of their three spouses die from gunshot wounds are about 1 in 76 million. And if you add in the children's deaths, it really skews the odds into the almost impossible realm. But those aren't the only gun deaths related to the Beallises. Donna, Randall's first wife, remarried, and her husband's name was David Presley, and in March of 2015, her husband was found in a hotel room, dead from a gunshot wound to the head. Now, I don't think that Donna had anything to do with any of the deaths, but what are the chances that the spouses of both her and Randall have all died from gunshot wounds to the head? I mean, the odds have to just be astronomical. From what I've heard, the police didn't make much effort at investigating Shawna's death. And supposedly in 2021, which is when Charity's father spoke with police, they reopened the case. But if they'd already destroyed all of the evidence, I don't know what they expected to find. Shawna's manner of death is still listed as a suicide. No one has been arrested in the death of Shawna or Charity, and anyone I've discussed in this episode is innocent until proven guilty. Thank you so much for joining me. Please like, share, and comment to help get Shawna's and Charity's and the twins' cases out there. I'll be back soon with more true crime. Until then, stay safe and be happy.